Maharishi Vedic architecture is the architecture of nature. It's the architecture of galaxies, of solar systems, of human physiology, of subatomic particles. And it is the principles of architecture that maintain balance and wholeness in the entire cosmos. We can use these principles of nature's own architecture to create wholeness and balance in our own lives. We can create houses according to the same principles of architecture that nature uses. We can create thereby influences of good health, of happiness, of family harmony, of growth to enlightenment. And we do this in part through the same mechanism that operates when we practice the transcendental meditation technique. We know that when we do that, we have an experience that we call the alignment of individual intelligence with cosmic intelligence. That means that we meditate, we have a sweet, quiet experience, we come out, we're more rested, we're more alert, our mind is clearer, we are more successful, there's more bliss. And that is because the individual intelligence of day to day has temporarily, during meditation, become infused with the cosmic intelligence that underlies all of the organization of nature at the basis of thinking, pure consciousness. And that same mechanism, the alignment of individual intelligence with cosmic intelligence, can occur through the influence of the buildings that we live in. If they are organized in response to the dominant laws of nature in our environment, the sun, the moon, the North Pole, the South Pole, the planets overhead, the cosmic forces that sweep overhead from east to west, because these are the things that our brain has evolved in the presence of. It turns out that brain coherence, that the degree to which cells in the brain communicate with each other, different parts of the brain, vary depending upon the direction that we face. We are actually orientation-sensitive machines. And what we understand is that we have maximum coherence when we face east, the rising sun, the direction from which the celestial influences pass across the surface of the earth. And so when we design a Maharishi Vedic home, we design it, for example, so that the head of the bed is to the east, because we spend a third of our lives in one orientation, sleeping in our beds. And if that third of our lives is with head lying down to the east, then we have maximum brain coherence. And it affects our neurochemistry, it affects the level of stress hormones in the physiology, it affects our behavior, and in a good published medical peer-reviewed journal article, it was demonstrated that the direction in which we sleep affects our mental health, affects depression and anxiety levels. And so this is one example of one of the ways in which we use the laws of nature's own architecture in the architecture of our own houses, so that the house becomes a machine for our own ideal living. Another principle is that the sun, the dominant force of natural law on this planet, has different qualities of energy over the course of the day, and we place different functions in a house in the appropriate place so that it will be supported by the appropriate one of the differing qualities of the sun's energy. So for instance, we put a dining room where digestion will be heightened. We put our study where our mind will be focused. We put the living room in a place that promotes conviviality. Then natural law supports our living in the house. Another principle that we understand is that while sunlight from all directions is nourishing to us, east light is the most healthful. East light is rejuvenating. And this was measured in a medical study that we found that had been done 20 years ago, which discovered that patients in one ward of a hospital who had east windows recovered and were released from treatment 3.5 days sooner than those patients who were in rooms on the other side of the corridor and had west light into their rooms. 3.5 days, quicker recovery from illness. And so we design houses to maximize east light into them for our own health in Maharishi, Vedic, or Vastu architecture. Another thing that we do is we face the house in the direction of the rising sun. The direction the house is oriented has differing effects upon us. And those directions that are completely nourishing are the house facing to the east or to the north. And so a Maharishi Vastu or Maharishi Sthapatya Veda home faces east or possibly also north. And it's very easy to measure the effects of differing home orientations. There have been studies that have discovered that mental health correlates with what direction a house faces. That the likelihood that we're under the care of a cardiologist, that is to say, the likelihood that we have heart problems, strongly correlates with the direction that our house faces. Even prosperity, in a study that was very carefully done and published in a peer-reviewed medical journal, even prosperity correlates with the direction that our house faces. And this is knowledge which has been known by many civilizations around the world throughout history. Even in the English language, the word to orient actually means, historically, to face the rising sun, to face east. Another element of Vedic architecture is to use the proportions and measurements of nature to create an influence of coherence and balance. Another one is to ensure that the influences from the site, the influences that surround the house, are only nourishing. And so when we are contacted at maharshivastu.org by someone who wants to build a house or a developer who wants to build many houses, the first thing that we do is we evaluate the land. We help them to select land that will have only nourishing influences. This is very important. There are other things which are elements of Vedic architecture, of Maharishi Vastu architecture to support success, good health, and growth to enlightenment. Such things as having plenty of fresh air, having cross ventilation, having lots of sunlight in rooms, building of natural and non-toxic materials so that houses do not poison us. Common sense things, but they can be forgotten. We do not want to forget and make those mistakes. And this knowledge can also be applied to the level of cities. We can actually build entire communities using the principles of nature's own architecture. And when we do this, the mayor can govern more successfully, lives are lived superfluidly, and in fact, a town can become invincible, repelling negative outside incoherent influences. It's an amazing prospect, and it is our vision of possibilities for the entire world. If we consider that houses can have 8 different possible orientations, the 4 cardinal directions and the 4 diagonals, and only 2 of them have nourishing influences, then it means that 75% of the people in the world are living their lives under damaging influences from the orientation of the houses in which they live. And this is not necessary. And so Maharishi Vastu architecture, which is offered in the United States by the company Fortune Creating Buildings, provides the information to builders, to contractors, to potential homeowners, and to developers so that they can build homes, cities, schools, environments that will have only nourishing influences upon them and all the generations that will live in those buildings for centuries to come. It's the fulfillment of the practice of architecture and construction, and it is something that I hope becomes widely known and widely used around the world.